More news out of Washington today. Bloomberg now has learned that President Biden is preparing to announce a release of oil from the Strategic Petroleum Release in concert, of course, with several other countries, and it might happen as soon as Tuesday. For more, let's bring in our Bloomberg chief Washington correspondent, Annmarie Hordern. And Annmarie, the why behind this, is this just help to relieve some of the price pressures?
Yeah, that's certainly one of the reasons. I mean, the president has been talking about tapping the Strategic Petroleum Reserve for weeks, and a number of questions were he faced when he was in Rome and Glasgow, and now we're finally getting some information about all this networking they've been doing with other big consumers like China, Japan, and India may come to fruition. They may have this coordinated effort for all of these countries to tap their reserves and come out on the market and help to try to push down prices. We don't see this very often, so it would be a really big deal. We do know that right now, according to our reporting, is that it is a little bit in flux. What they are looking at is north of 35 million barrels, and then that would be released over a longer period of time.
Annmarie, you're a woman who knows the White House intimately. You also know OPEC as well. So talk to us about what OPEC Plus, what the response would be from them, do you think?
Well, Halima Croft of RBC is already talking about what this could mean for the bilateral relationship between Washington and Saudi Arabia. This certainly would get the attention of OPEC Plus, because it's not just the U.S. that would be acting. It would be consuming nations acting together. So that would certainly threaten them and put their backs up a bit. But on top of that, you may see what we saw last year, which was a tit-for-tat between Moscow and Riyadh. Potentially, you're going to see a tit-for-tat between Riyadh and Washington. And there's an OPEC Plus meeting next week. And potentially, if the United States does this alongside other consumers and they put more barrels in the market, OPEC may not want to go to the next 400,000 barrels they're supposed to let in on the market starting next week for the next month. So potentially, you're going to see a lot of politics come into play when it comes to the oil market if the U.S. decides to do this.
And Annmarie, in thinking of that tit-for-tat that could develop, it feels like the oil market would be caught right in the middle of it. I mean, what's the worst-case scenario look like for there?
Well, the worst-case scenario would be if OPEC Plus continues to hold back supplies and you have prices rise, right? That would be not a great scenario for this administration, which is trying to also make sure they're relieving consumers at the pump. They want to bring down oil prices and therefore relieve gasoline prices. But there's also something else we need to keep an eye on. We have Austria in lockdown. We have Germany today coming out and talking about Chancellor Merkel saying this is the worst phase right now of the pandemic. If you see more cars being parked, planes being ground, and you have more lockdowns across Europe, that in itself will hurt demand. So potentially we need to take a look at what's going on with the pandemic at the same time on whether or not OPEC Plus starts to ratchet back some of the barrels if the U.S. was to make this SPR move.